Hello YouTube, this is Matt Paulsen, and I'm going to bring you another, hopefully quick video in the miniature series. This is a more recent game. It was played last month at the tournament at which I broke 2100 USCF. So I was white in this game. I'll try and move quickly to keep it 15 minutes-ish. My opponent played the Sicilian. I played knight c3. My opponent played a6. I used to have a lot of trouble playing against a6 and the structure that follows it. You know, with b5, bishop b7 early on, and the queenside expansion possibly involving b4, kicking this knight away. But it was, I think it was when I read a Kenilworthian article called Gadir Gesenov's anti-Paulsen recipe that I first got turned on to this idea of playing g3 and bishop g2 combined with d4 against this. So I got the chance to try it out in this game. G3, my opponent played b5 predictably. I've tried other moves in this position before. I've tried just a4, just preventing this expansion altogether. But the moves a6 and a4, they generally favor black, because a4, you know, a6 is more useful. It takes away this square from white's pieces. Also, a4 can times surrender the b4 square. I've also tried pawn to g4 in this position, which I don't really recommend to anyone. But knight f3 is also not a bad choice. So I played g3. Again, my opponent has disclosed that he's playing for a6 and b5, so it makes no real sense to develop the bishop on this diagonal. It's got no future there, so it should just head for g2 right away. That's the logic behind this. b5, bishop d2, bishop b7, knight ge2. And this knight ge2 is played so that I can play pawn to d4, whereas knight f3 might interfere with the bishop's defense of e4. So I'm trying to go back into an open Sicilian, which I do after knight f6. And here I could have played d4 right away, but I decided to castle first. And it leads into the same thing after my opponent plays b6. You might be wondering what happens if black plays b4 here. Well, since black hasn't played e6 yet, the c5 square can be vulnerable. So the knight comes out to a4, where it looks at the c5 pawn, which is undefended. And it also, in some lines, can look at the b6 square, which is weakened by a6. So here, if my opponent takes this, there's like d3, and then knight d6. White can just take here. And this pawn exchange leads white ahead in development, and black has this awkward-looking knight on d6. And I'd say white's position is much healthier here. So here, let's see, if bishop takes e4 instead, then I think just takes here and d3, which forces this knight to go back somewhere, probably f6, and then just takes here, and this is fine for white. So yeah, that is it's more critical though after black plays e6, and then white plays d4, c takes d, knight takes d. This position could be reached 3 or 4 different ways. And the most critical line here is for black to play b4. Again, this drives away this knight, and is threatening to take this pawn on e4. But this is a gambit. White is giving up the pawn on e4 in order to try and gain compensation in rapid development, the rook on the half-open file towards black's king. and possibly the bishop on g2 becoming active. So the critical line here runs knight a4, and now knight takes e4 is considered to be very risky because of rook to e1. Again, the bishop on b7 is unprotected, which really limits black's options here. So I think what's the right line here? I think if knight d6, then white can take here and then play queen f3, and this is awkward for black to defend. Yes. So for that reason, it's much safer for black to take this way. And then white exchanges, and then rook e1, and then again getting on the half-open file, gaining a tempo on this knight. And if black tries to defend with pawn to d5, then white increases the tension with pawn to c4. Again, threatening to do an exchange here and try and undermine the support of this knight on e4. And all while this is happening, black's king is still sitting in the center. So, I mean, if takes en passant, then white can play knight takes. And again, this white has good play, I feel, for the invested pawn in this position. There are many tactical opportunities here for white. So so yeah, this is a variation that I try and get if my opponent is playing the the early a6 b5. I try and steer them towards this. So b4 is critical here. If black does not play b4, then white should just play rook to e1, defending his e4 pawn solidly, and he has an ideal position. So here my opponent played a move which I had not seen before, queen c7. And it looks logical on the face because the c7 square is good for black's queen in many of these e6 Sicilians. It surveys the center, it's on the half-open file, and these pawns on a6 and e6 usually help protect it from knight attacks. So c7 is a solid square for black to have a queen on in the Sicilian. But here, I think because white's primary goal is to get in the knight d5 shot, this queen on c7 is just going to be in the way. So I think if black is not going to play b4, I think he has to do something else here. But this move, I think, may be bad. Anyway, so I continue with rook e1. Protecting my center pawn, and white has a good position here. My opponent played d6, potentially reinforcing some center squares where he might put one of his knights. So I develop a piece with bishop g5. My opponent reinforces the knight with knight d7, and I play a4. So this I'm trying to open up some activity on the queen side. Here, because the b5 point is only defended once, and it's attacked 3 times, something's got to give. Black cannot maintain his pawn on b5. So that suggests that black has either got to push or take on a4. So normally the reaction to a4 is for black to push the pawn past. This is a very natural move. Especially since the b5 square is not accessible to a knight currently. Perhaps my opponent was concerned that this knight might come to a2. And I could try and show that this pawn on b4 is exposed, and by attacking it with c3, try and force open the c file, where rook c1 will take advantage of this queen on c7. If black tries to solidify this pawn by playing a5, he's giving up the b5 square to the white pieces. And a knight on b5 will help white in an attack on the pawn on d6 on the half-open file. So I was actually planning a more aggressive idea here, although I don't think there's anything wrong with knight a2. My idea was if he plays b4 to attack him with knight d5. Again, this also attacks the pawn on b4, and a5 can't even be played here, because then you've got two knights converging on c7. This knight can be taken, but then e takes d, giving discovered check. And now bishop e7 probably loses to knight f5, coming in and putting pressure on the pinned piece. And if black tries to flee with his king, with king d8, then just throw in knight c6 check. Now, if black has to take this, then surely white is improving his position. He's got this protected passed pawn on the 6th rank, which is defended by this monster fianchettoed bishop, currently unopposed. And he's got to move his knight. So if he moves his knight, then white will have the opportunity to take on f6 and shatter the black pawns. So there's lots of compensation for the piece here. And if he doesn't take the knight, if he just moves his king again, then there's knight takes here. And this pawn on d5 is very powerful. It's essentially dividing the two halves of black's army. It's very difficult for his kingside pieces to communicate with his queenside. And already black has to respect such ideas as rook a3 to c3. So yeah, that was possible had my opponent played b4. Instead, my opponent captured on a4, which took me by surprise, I think. So I played rook takes, and I was very pleased that I got the opportunity to bring my rook into the game. And here I started to formulate an idea based on using the rook lift. My opponent played bishop e7 next, and my next move, or the idea behind my next move, maybe not the best way in the position, but I had this scheme of taking advantage of the rook a4 move, and I played rook b4. I have a tactical threat here. I would like to play rook takes b7, removing this light square defender, and then I want to play the move e5, unleashing the power of this bishop on the long diagonal. So that is my idea. So my opponent played a very risky move, probably not aware of what was going on tactically, and he played d5. Again, it's very risky to play center breaks like this when your king is still stuck in the middle. And look at every white piece is on a good square, and it's influencing the center. So this is definitely not good. But let's continue to go through the game. Again, he's attacking my rook on b4, which is loose, so he's forcing me to go through with my idea of taking on b7. And now, instead of playing e takes d, which was also possible, again, this is the move that white wants to play in this type of situation, which extends the reach of the bishop on g2 and also half opens the e-file. But I felt that knight takes was better here. It's more forcing. It attacks the bishop on e7, which would be undefended if black were to castle. And this knight can be taken, but then e takes d. Again, we're activating the rook and pinning it to this, or pinning the bishop to the king. And there are ideas here such as knight f5, putting more pressure on the bishop, and also d6, attacking the bishop and also firing down the long diagonal. So surely e takes d5 loses here. And the the scheme is that white is going to take this bishop and then play e5, and win back material, and ideally still have an attacking position. My opponent played h6 here, and black's position is bad, but this is not helping black's cause. I guess it's counterattacking this bishop here, so that if I were to play knight takes bishop, he could probably just take my bishop on g5. But it does weaken the king side further. So I played bishop takes knight, and my opponent played g takes. Probably because if he takes with a piece, then I'm playing e5. And also there are other ideas here, now that he's played h6, of possibly chopping on e6 here, and then playing queen h5 check. But my opponent took on f6, which eliminates those ideas, but then I exchange on e7 and I play e5. So here's where the material comes back. This bishop, diagonal can't be blocked. The bishop is hitting the queen and the rook behind it, so I have the opportunity to win back the exchange that I sacrificed. My opponent took on b2, and I did not take on a8 here. I wanted to keep my bishop on the board. So in order to do this, I threw in knight f5 check. The idea of knight f5 check is that I want to force my opponent's king to go to the back rank and disconnect his rooks, so that when I take on a8, he can't take back. My opponent captured the knight, and I played queen d6 check, and now the opponent cannot avoid the back rank any longer. Plays king d8. So here there are already ideas of checkmate brewing, because this knight on d7 is pinned and is a giant target. However, if I go for checkmate right away, black would like to bring the rook to a7, removing it from emprise, and defend laterally. And this rook on a7 is a very good defender. So I took time out, and I took his rook. Material is actually even here. 5 pawns each side, a rook, a minor piece, a queen. But black is dead, because his king is very weak. So plays rook he plays rook e8, to defend d7 again. I play rook d1. He plays rook e7, and here I have e takes f6. And my opponent resigned in this position. The pawn is attacking the rook, which in turn is preventing black from getting checkmated. And the problem is this pawn can't be taken, because then queen b8 is checkmate, because this knight is pinned and the queen is taking away all the squares. So yeah, this is say a miniature, and it was the first time over the board that I've gotten to play this this system, where white plays bishop g2 and rook e1 and offers up the e-pawn. So I hope you learned some tactical ideas from that come into play in your future games. All right, have a good one, YouTube. Bye.